So welcome back to the Critical Lowdown, everybody. I'm Alan Fagan. I'm the VP of Sales for the Americas at EPS Global. And, today we're going somewhere a little bit different. For the last few years on the podcast, we've talked about open networking for service providers, for ISPs, for data centers. Today we're talking about what's arguably the most demanding network environment ever built. And that's the AI factories that are being stood up by neoclouds and sovereign data center operators around the world. And today we've got the perfect person to dig into it with. So Matt Free from Aria Networks, and Matt is someone who spent his career at the intersection of enterprise networking and AI. So Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
And so could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the path that brought you to Aria Networks?
Yeah, sure. 25 plus years in the IT data center realm. It started off in the late 90s. Slinging storage, right? Yeah. And then I turned into fiber channel networking and SANs, and then spent most of my career at Cisco, 14 years leading data center teams there, spent some time in Nutanix, and then Juniper. And then if you look at, where those companies were focused was around, cloud networking.
Yeah.
And now it's a totally different game around AI networking. And I met Mansour Karam when I was at Juniper. He was doing some very innovative things. And when he left and knew that there was a different point in time where AI networking was something different, he addressed that problem or that challenge, and I couldn't not go, right? So happy to be here.
Great. And Aria, you guys came out of stealth in April.
We did.
And made a big splash, right, with a $125 million raise, right? So congratulations on that for a start. And, you came out under the banners of networks that think. And you mentioned the founding team, Mansour. We actually knew him from his Apstra days. Mm-hmm. But Apstra, Arista, Juniper, Meta. So for people hearing the name for the first time, what is Aria, and what is the core problem that you guys are going after for AI cluster operators?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. So it's really the whole system. It's hardware, it's telemetry, and it's intelligence all boiled into one. You can't do piece and parts without doing the whole thing.
Yeah.
And if you look at AI networking, it's fundamentally different in terms of speed, in terms of performance. And as I mentioned before, most vendors are looking at their switch. They only see their portion of some of the problems. But if you look at legacy vendors or current vendors, the operators are looking at second telemetry, while we look at microsecond telemetry.
Okay.
Right? We have hardware that's Tomahawk 5, Tomahawk 6, with sign that's burned in, and then we also have something called an FDE, a forward development engineer, that really goes out and makes sure that the integration points with a system is all working together, so that just professional service that bolted on.
Okay, so taking a step back down and looking at the market, and we're seeing it in our own business. We sell a lot of optical transceivers from Coherent. The demand is like nothing we've ever seen before. And neocloud revenue was over $25 billion in 2025. But the really exciting thing is that Synergy and others are forecasting that it's going to be close to $400 billion by 2031. So you're in front of the operators every week. So from your perspective, what's changing about how they're building infrastructure now versus what it looked like 12 to 18 months ago?
Yeah, another great question. I'd say, the networking piece and the hardware was good enough. The legacy vendors, through acquisition and over time, let software work around some of the issues, which can't be done anymore, right? There's gray failures, there's speed, there's congestion that can't be seen. But what Aria is doing is we're pulling data right off the chip that allows us to get microsecond telemetry. So we see what other vendors cannot see. They're blind to the great failures that the network suffers from. That's number one. Number two, if you look at AI infrastructure, the whole ball of wax, about 10 to 15% is the network. But it can equal, and when it's running properly, a tremendous amount of revenue, right? So the network moved away from a cost center to more of a revenue multiplier.
Right. So what do you think the difference is now between how neocloud operators think about infrastructure compared to what traditional enterprise or hyperscaler thinks about it?
Yeah, I would like it to the farming industry, right? You got the land grab, and everyone was going after getting power and cooling, getting space, getting that, and now they've moved from that to we have to produce a harvest. Okay.
Right.
So, when you're standing up infrastructure, that's great, that's fine. But once you start losing compute and you're wasting compute, that's where the big issues are. So if you've got a farm, and your irrigation system has a leak, or if you're an enterprise, it doesn't really matter. But if you're trying to really reap the harvest, you're going to need that to be, lockstep, providing the best water you can to that harvest and that field, so that you can gain the fruit from that.
So, Aria's view is that the network sitting underneath an AI cluster, historically it's been a bit of a black box, right? It's there, it's busy, but you can't really see what it's doing. And you guys have designed yours the opposite way. You mentioned earlier from the chip up, so it's constantly reporting on itself in real time. Now, in plain terms, what does that actually let an operator see and do that they couldn't do before?
So it's what we call, again, deep networking. And deep is like deep inspection of not just the switch, but the entire fabric. The NIC, the transceivers, the network, the whole ball of wax there. And typically vendors can't see what's going on, what's degradation or what have you. So that telemetry that we get is really the secret sauce that we have that allows us to help the operator look where problems are. On top of that, we use AI. We're not going to slap it on an LLM. We're built with AI for AI, meaning it's basically using AI to auto detect, auto discover, and also auto fix, right? So we're talking to our networks, not yelling at them, right? We're talking to our networks, being able to address issues before they happen.
Yeah, and an interesting part of that is that the system's not just designed for human network engineers, right? You're designing it for use by AI agents too.
Exactly.
So what does that mean in practice, and how is operating an Aria network different, compared with a traditional setup?
Yeah, and as I mentioned before, typically it's software that the folks need to kind of rewrite and find out what hardware issues are going on. Now you see a much broader issue in terms of performance degradation. It's also at scale. Right? We're not talking about 100 servers. We're talking about tens of thousands of GPUs. So there's a term called MFU, model flop utilization. Right, that wasn't a term many years ago. So 1% in MFU improvement can turn into 5 to 6% of revenue for a customer. It can also pay for the network for 5 years, right? So those types of numbers you can't ignore. And quite frankly, this is why CEOs, co-founders of these neoclouds are so interested in talking to Aria. Even CROs, why? Because it's a revenue generator, it's not a cost center.
Yeah, right. So the relationship with EPS is a relatively new one. Well, you're a startup, so every relationship that you have is a pretty new one, I guess. But talk us through how the relationship with EPS came together, and what makes a value-added distributor like us, the right route to market for you rather than going direct.
So there's a lot of other distributors out there, right? But EPS Global has obviously a global presence, but it's not. We can't be everything to all VARs out there, and EPS's ability to execute, they're talking to the same customers, they're talking to the same partners, and obviously solve the same problems, right? When you look at transceivers, like with Amphenol, some of the other ones, you guys have that experience. We're small, we've got an amazing product, we're getting all the attention, but we can't scale without, partners like you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we have a relationship with Coherent that goes back 25 years, believe it or not, and I think we're the largest global distributor, so, and it's never been more in demand than it is now. It's just it's unprecedented. We're building a reference architecture that's specifically aimed at neoclouds, technology stack, and Aria sits as one layer in that stack, and it spans everything from the optics that we just mentioned, switches down to power, cabling, install. From a customer's day one perspective, how do you see that helping them?
Most neoclouds, they think of the network as an afterthought, right? They're still concerned about getting the GPU set up. Where's the power? Where's the cabling? How do we do this? How do we get funding? And again, the network is typically the afterthought. But what this does is this reduces the risk, right? Your experience combined with our end-to-end visibility of the network and being able to stand things up so quickly takes the risk out of a neocloud, right? It's it's the life of Ricky Bobby, if not first, you're last, right? So these neoclouds want to get up, they want to stay up, and they want to increase their efficiencies.
That's a very appropriate analogy to use, given that we're sitting here in Indianapolis, right?
It just changed now.
Right, there you go, perfect. So looking forward then, we talked about how much money there is out there, right? And there's a huge amount of capital landing right now in this space, tens of billions across, CoreWeave, Microsoft, the sovereign builds in Europe and the Middle East. And so looking ahead to the next 12 to 18 months, where are the genuine bottlenecks? The power, optics, software, something else?
I think it's going to be power and optics for a while.
Yeah.
A lot. Some of the vendors have a hard time with supply chain, right? They've been traditional networking, now supply chain has got them on their ear. But for the most part, neocloud CEOs need to look at the network not as a cost center anymore. Right. It must be a revenue generation machine. And if they start looking at that and kind of skate where the puck is going and do it quickly, that'll be a piece they don't have to worry about in the future. Right? I'd also say, with our FEE, deployments, these neoclouds, they don't have the opportunity to spin up and hire 100 people to work on their network, right? So they need something that's going to be proven, which is proven by EPS Global and Aria, and then readily available in terms of supply chain and get up there as fast as possible.
Yeah, we're seeing that as the demand shifts from the training to the inference. The type of people who are building the inference data centers, they look a bit different to the guys who are building the training ones. They're not the hyperscalers, and we feel like they need more of our help. They need the help from an Aria, they need help from an EPS to put these solutions together.
100%.
They haven't got an army of engineers to do this, right?
It takes a long time to hire them, if you can, right?
Yeah.
And you don't have that time.
Yeah. And they prefer not to if they don't have to. Sure. Right? If they're able to find a partner that can help them put this solution together.
They can use that money to buy more GPUs.
and more networking. So hopefully we'll have some neocloud operators watching this video or listening to this podcast. If they are, and whether they're a year into a build or whether they're just about to start one, what's the one thing you'd want them to be thinking about when they're specifying the network layer of their cluster?
Yeah, I would say just don't neglect the power of the network and how don't assume that it's just going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at there's other accelerators out there, and you got AMD, you've got places like Positron, the Matrix, they're popping up. Cerebras' big announcement.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that the network is going to work in whatever GPU environment they want, accelerator environment they want, especially moving from training to inference. So, with that, I would make sure that they knew the power of the network and don't underestimate, that and think of it as an afterthought.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for the questions, Matt. So thanks very much. This was very informative. Grateful for you taking the time. We're very excited about this partnership and really looking forward to see where it's going to go.
Likewise. Thank you. Appreciate it.